Hey everyone, and welcome to our fun little study group for PP 5440, Introduction to Public Policy and Management. Today, we're digging into the readings from Chapter 8 of our textbook, Race and Social Equity, a Nervous Area of Government. So when we ask if our government is doing a good job, we usually think about a couple of key things, right? Like, is it efficient? Is it effective? But what if there's this huge, crucial third element we've been missing all along? Let's dive into this.
And this quote right here from Supreme Court Justice Harry Blackmun is really our starting point. It's a powerful idea. It basically says that if we ever want to get to a place that's truly beyond racism, we can't just pretend race doesn't exist. We actually have to look at it, measure it, and really understand its impact head on. There's no other way.
Okay, so what is that missing element I mentioned? Well, for decades, the way we've measured government performance has had this massive blind spot, a really important piece of the puzzle that was just consistently overlooked.
First, we've always measured effectiveness. And that's simple, right? It just means, does a service actually do what it's supposed to do? Does the garbage get picked up? Are the streets paved? It's the most basic question you can ask.
And second, of course, we measure efficiency. This is all about getting the most bang for our buck. Are we providing these services at the lowest possible cost for the taxpayer? These two E's, effectiveness and efficiency, have pretty much dominated the entire conversation for years.
But this is where we find that missing piece. A third, absolutely critical E that kind of changes everything. Equity. Equity asks a totally different question. It asks, are these effective and efficient services actually being delivered fairly to everyone?
The public administration scholar H. George Fredrickson just nailed it with this quote. See, it's not enough to say a service is well managed. We have to ask that next question. Well managed for whom? Because assuming that a service that's good for one group is automatically good for everybody else is, well, it's just plain wrong. If we're not asking for whom, we're missing the whole point. So to really dig into this idea of equity, we need to make sure we're all on the same page with a few key concepts. Let's just quickly break down some of the language that's used to analyze these kinds of systemic issues. So at the very heart of all this is the idea of a racial equity analysis. The key word here, and you're going to hear it a lot, is systematic. This isn't about vague feelings or hunches. Nope. This is a disciplined process, using actual data and tools to get a clear, objective picture of what's going on. Now, this is so important to understand. There are two different ways inequity can happen. On one side, you've got disparate treatment, which is intentional discrimination. Someone is treated unfairly because of their race. But on the other side, you can have what's called disparate impact, or an unintentional outcome. This is where a policy that seems totally neutral on the surface ends up hurting one racial group way more than another, even if that was never the goal. And this distinction is absolutely vital because, legally speaking, the U.S. Constitution is almost entirely focused on intent. For an action to be unconstitutional, you pretty much have to prove it was done because of race, not just that it happened to cause harm in spite of race. And this is exactly why this kind of equity analysis is so powerful. It helps governments find and fix unfair outcomes, even when nobody broke the law or intended for anyone to get hurt. Okay. So how can a city or a state actually do this? How can you measure equity? Well, the good news is there's a really practical toolkit we can use, a framework that's broken down into 4 clear approaches. This framework basically gives us 4 different lenses to look through. First up is procedural fairness. Are the rules of the game the same for everybody? Simple enough. Second is access. I mean, it doesn't really matter if a service exists if people can't actually get to it, right? Third, we look at quality. Is the service at the same level for everyone, or does it change from one neighborhood to the next? And finally, maybe the most important one, outcomes. Do the results of the program actually benefit all groups equally? Using these 4 steps, you can analyze pretty much any government service out there. So this all sounds great in theory, but what does it actually look like in practice? Let's check out 2 really fascinating case studies of governments putting these very tools to use. First up, we've got a case from Seattle City Light that started with what seems like a really simple, almost boring question. I mean, how could something as basic as a streetlight possibly have anything to do with racial equity? Well, their analysis found that the old system of just waiting for people to call in a broken light was creating these hidden barriers. For example, immigrant communities with language barriers were just less likely to call and report them. They also found this historical pattern where big improvement projects always seem to start in the wealthier, whiter northern neighborhoods. So, what they do? They flip the script. The new plan was proactive. They started replacing lights on a set schedule, and they intentionally started in the more diverse southern part of the city first.
Now let's jump over to Iowa, where this one number, this absolutely shocking statistic, revealed a huge problem in their criminal justice system. A report came out and found that Iowa was putting Black residents in prison at a rate 13 times higher than white residents. That was the highest ratio in the entire country. So in response, Iowa passed this totally groundbreaking law. It requires that before any new criminal justice bill can even be debated, a minority impact statement has to be created. This forces lawmakers to stop and ask, hey, what effect is this proposed law going to have on different racial groups? It's a really powerful way to think about that disparate impact before a bill ever becomes law.
So, after looking at the theory and seeing these real world examples, what's the big takeaway here? What does this all mean for how we should think about what good government even is?
It really boils down to this. First, equity isn't some nice-to-have add-on. It's a core performance metric, every bit as important as efficiency and effectiveness. Second, this analysis has to be proactive, not just a reaction after a problem pops up. Third, these tools help us find those subtle, systemic issues that aren't necessarily illegal but are still profoundly unfair. And finally, this is a skill. We have to actively train our public leaders to know how to use these tools and use them well. And that leaves us with one last crucial question to think about for next time. If we truly believe that equity is a cornerstone of good government, what does that mean for how we train the public leaders of tomorrow? Thanks for joining the study group.